it's very much about like creating the strategy ahead of time and really understanding what works for you. And like when I'm talking about managing energy, again, introverts recharge alone, extroverts recharge in groups. So how do you put yourself in a position where you could be somewhat hooked into the charger while you're selling?
Mm.
If you're an
Mm.
introvert, okay, it's going to be more research heavy. It's going to be more deep conversation heavy. If you're an extrovert, that 50 phone calls a day still work because you're constantly recharging with each little conversation.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a more modern approach to selling, the application of virtual and hybrid selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Red Staffstrom. Red.
Boom.
First time I've got it right. You've been
Yeah,
Staffstom for most of the day while I've
I've
been practicing
been
this.
I've been just about everything. Like I think mostly my last name is just a mumble of S's. Like it's just like a snake who doesn't want to say any real consonant in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Just like
But
that.
what did you say before we came on air? It's like an IKEA piece of furniture and no one
Yeah,
could say that anyway. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's staff strum, but like I've heard staff storm, I've heard like staff strong, like I've heard just about any combination of Scrabble letters you could have. Like they get the STA right, and then it's all downhill from there.
there we go. But red will do for us. Red will do for us.
Yes,
Um, and your company, your organization is Broken Salespeople,
yes,
which is, I mean, that's probably a podcast in itself.
yes.
But particularly what I want to talk about today is your keen interests in introverts in sales. So I'm going to kick off just with what'll probably become the episode title, actually. Do introverts sell better?
They can. They can.
Okay, good.
I
Excellent
won't say
podcast.
they
Good to meet you.
automatically do. Yeah, no,
Sorry.
there's not.
Yeah.
It when you're talking about 50% of a population, depending on what country you're looking at, like estimates for introverts are anywhere between 30 to 50% of US population, there is no hard and fast rule that like this sells better than this one. It's the same way like okay, if you learn sales, there's so many different avenues within that. Are you doing copywriting? Are you doing marketing? Are you an SDR, an AE? Are you full cycle? There's so much in there that we can't just say, are you good or better at sales? What I do is I help introverts find the way that they sell best, is really the way that I like to explain it. An introvert is not going to do well in a situation like an SDR where they're making 100 phone calls a day. That's not going to work for us. So what we have to do is be more creative. We have to figure out ways away from the let's beat up the phones and leave 100 voicemails. It's much more about building deeper relationships quicker with the right people as opposed to a spray and pray technique, which a lot of sales directors use.
Yeah. Just before we go on, sorry, is it just worth us, because there might be some people who go, no, yeah, extrovert, I get that. Is it
Yeah.
just worth explaining? Because those words are quite technical. And I think sometimes
Yes.
today they come with a bit too many connotation. And I think you're using it in the original and the sort of the
Yeah.
psychological capacity.
I talk about it very much in the original, like Carl Jung definition of it. Introverts are not all. I think of the Breakfast Club with Ali Sheedy's character. When I think of like the pop culture introvert, like weird, awkward, a lot of dark clothing, like squeaks rather than talks, like that's what most people think of when they hear introvert but or extrovert. The way I usually explain it to people is imagine you've had a really bad week. Like everything fell apart. It's just been a mess. It's now Friday night. How do you recharge your batteries? What are you going to do? Are you going to go out and talk to people? Are you going to, you know, go to the bar and tie on some drinks? Or are you going to go down and play video games or read a book or take a bath with quiet music on? Like it's about knowing how you recharge rather than your social skills. Saying an
Yeah.
introvert can't sell or an introvert can't have social skills is like saying an introvert can't play team sports.
Yes.
Anybody can be good at basketball, It's a skill set, but it's about knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, and how to use them to your advantages rather than, you know, going in and playing the game the wrong way. If you're not 7 foot, you're not going to play as a center. You're going to work on your jump shot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I think it was important just to position that. I mean, another way I've heard it,
100%.
yeah, I like sometimes explain like this, which again is probably nearer to the Jungian kind of definition. It's kind of where your energy focus is.
Yes.
Intra is inside, extra
Yes.
is outside. So somebody who's kind of more introvert, kind of a bit more thoughtful, perhaps a bit more kind of, yeah, which can then come across in the behavior. The extrovert, it's outside, they're giving a lot of the energy out. That's where they're looking for
Yeah.
kind of their recharge, like you said. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the best definition that I've found that makes sense from, like, obviously it's internal versus external. Like, you know, I'm very comfortable sitting alone in a dark room for an hour and just thinking or listening to books or doing that kind of thing. That's torture for an extrovert. And after the COVID shutdowns, we could very easily tell, like, the people who didn't do well with the COVID shutdowns are much more extroverted.
yeah.
Meanwhile, me, I'm like, this is perfect. Let's do this forever.
Yeah.
Like I
Have
love,
COVID
like
forever.
I'm one of those weirdos that loved wearing a mask because I was able to avoid so much small talk in grocery stores. Like I didn't have to have, well, it's a hot day today. I'm like, nope, I can't hear you. Like I can't hear anything with these masks.
That's my sister. You say, I can't hear you. I've got a mask on. It's like, yeah.
But that's the way for me. Like I didn't realize how deaf I was until COVID. Like apparently everything that I do is off of lip reading now.
Wow. Wow. That's
But
funny.
that's the way that I look at it is, where do you do better? Like you've had a bad day, you need to focus, you need to bring yourself back to zero. How are you going to do it? Are you going to go out to a party, which, yeah, I do, and I could be great and I can network, but within an hour, I want to Irish goodbye out of there.
The Irish goodbye is where you just wander off, isn't it?
Oh,
You don't tell
yeah,
anybody.
just wander off. Like no actual, like I just, ninja vanish. Like you just do that. And I've been doing that since college. Like we would have parties in my own dorm room that I would disappear from.
Oh, love it. Love it. Right, we better get back on track so we can just talk about the
Yeah.
characteristics of it and giggle around them. Which, but and they're all true. You're just explaining them
Yeah.
in a most humorous way. So we're saying about a bit of a deliberately vague question. Do they sell better? But what you're saying is, well, it depends what they're doing, getting into the right place. And so this is how you're coaching people. It's helping them to make the most
It's
of what
about
they're going to be good at.
understanding the strategies where you do the best, no matter what, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. But I really focus on introverts because so much of the sales strategy that we have already that's been built in is absolutely designed towards this extroverted ideal, that almost all sales techniques that have been around since the 1930s, it's this hail fellow well met kind of personality. It's so structured around this, Dale Carnegie uber like politician human, and that doesn't work for everybody. We can't do that. I can't operate at that level for a sustainable period of time. So what I have to do is figure out, my social battery lasts 2 hours a day, whatever it happens to be. How do I make the most out of those 2 hours as quickly as possible so that I don't burn out every single day, so that I'm not reduced to ashes and just irritated with my wife all evening? So it's very much about your own emotional intelligence. It's about putting structures in place that work for you and work for introverts, rather than, again, well, if you make triple the phone calls, you'll make triple the revenue. That doesn't work anymore in this society.
Well, that's another different podcast completely, nothing to do with
100%.
personality
But
style.
for
But
introverts, that is just particularly painful, is that, just triple the output. No, you don't understand the input that I need to do to get to the output I'm already at.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's have a think, and look, we will be at risk of stereotyping a bit, but again, that's the whole point.
Again, we can't break people, like break 9 billion people on this planet into two parties without being significantly stereotypical.
But for the sake of a short conversation of people to get it,
Yes.
what would be some of the things that a typical introvert might be good at? So naturally, they're just comfortable with this, and it's stuff which aligns to good selling that we know works today.
So what good introverts do is it's very much about research. It's about prep work. It's about thinking about your customers before you reach out to them, putting together a list, and having a very specific agenda before you even make contact. So you basically have those, I've been calling them shower conversations in your head about how everything's almost going to play out. Like, when you have that argument in the shower and you play out, you kind of play both sides and you almost like Daffy Duck it, where you're kind of like turning back and forth and like,
No, so I'm laughing because I do, but also I'm very visual, so I end up drawing on the share screen what I would be
same here.
whiteboarding in the office.
But like those are the kinds of things that introverts can do really well, is they can figure out the scenario so that they're not surprised by anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
The tricky thing is then they have managers who are trying to get every player on the field. They're trying to get everything. They have this scarcity mindset where we can't leave any money on the table at all. But what an introvert can do very well is create a strategy, create a list of 150 people, and build relationships with all of them, rather than making 50 calls a day and reaching out to a few thousand people a month.
Yeah, yeah,
So having that, I need to talk to these people at these companies. Here's what I need to know about them. We talked about it before we went live too. The last thing an introvert wants to do is make small talk over DM and ask one of those questions like, well, what do you want to be called? Tell me a little about yourself. Like, the ramp up for like an introvert to get to that point, to be enthusiastic and actually have that conversation, to ask a question that they could have just looked up, is painful to us.
yeah, yeah. But I'm scribbling the numbers down here, and I know you're kind of picking them out of the air. But 150 on one hand, 1,000 on the other.
Well, actually, I'm not pulling that out of my head.
Oh,
The
sorry.
150 is actually an anthropological number. It's called the
Oh yeah,
Dunbar principle.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm a big fan of the Dunbar principle. Like, okay, you could have very close, like very, very tight, like the people you absolutely love, it's usually around 5, immediate family around 25. Human beings have evolved into small societies and townships of about 150 people.
yeah.
And the more funerals you go to, the more parties you go to, that's usually where we top out in terms of acquaintances that we can know like on a first name basis with.
Yeah, yeah,
So when I think of introvert versus extrovert, I explain it well versus a puddle. So an extrovert does very well with the puddle, a whole lot of conversations, but they tend to be very shallow. What's the
yeah.
weather like by you? An introvert wants very few conversations, but very deep. So
And
they
so
want
now,
that well.
yeah. And sorry to interrupt, and so now let's look at what good selling involves today.
Yeah, it's
Deeper,
absolutely deep
better prepared
conversation.
conversations, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And introverts can be very good at that because they love those deep conversations. They love that problem solving. They love approaching a conversation with authentic curiosity. You know,
Yeah.
I don't care what the weather is by you. I just don't. Like, unless you're in peril of some kind with tornadoes or hurricanes, which would be pretty weird in England. Like, I just don't care. So let's talk about something that we can solve. Let's talk about a problem that we could wrap our heads around and do a puzzle together.
Mm,
That's the conversations introverts like. And that's what good salespeople should be doing, is having these problem solving conversations.
yeah. And so, I mean, we used to see it, didn't we? I'm probably still doing it. It might be on a comeback. I know in the States, it used to be how many air miles you'd got, how many miles you flew every year. Here, I
Mhm.
drive, 40,000 miles a year. Why? Because I'm out, I'm extroverted, I'm seeing people, I'm there. It's,
Yeah.
we should never realize it's a bit of a waste of time. Um,
Yeah.
but actually, I mean, all that's irrelevant. It's all about the depth of that conversation, as you said. I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. By the way, I'm going to steal that. If you ever hear me in a
Yeah,
webinar, I could well be talking about doing a puzzle together.
but that's the way we have to do it. It's like I'm not here to, you know, play a game of golf or whatever. First of all, I'm horrible at golf. It's basically just drinking in the woods for me.
Yeah.
But I want to, like, okay, let's actually solve a puzzle. Let's take apart your business and put it back together. I'm a big fan of the challenger sales model. Like
Hmm.
I read all of them, I look at all the models, but the idea of being an educator is one of my favorite thought processes in sales, period. And that's something that introverts can do very well is be that teacher, be that educator, to talk about knowledge, to talk about taking things apart and putting them back together for somebody. Um, Introverts love those conversations. We don't like, well, did you catch the game last night? So where did you go to school? It's on my profile. Just look.
I love it. And and as a part and parcel of that, is it fair to say that introverts tend to be better listeners as well? You know, they absorb the information better so they can process it and they can think it through? Or am I reading that wrong?
Yes and no. I'm going to say we can be if the information is important to us,
Oh, okay.
but we tune out to people the same way extroverts do. At least in my case, I know I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Like my wife can tell when I blank out because it's just okay. She's giving me the to-do list, and that's not where my head is right now. Like we can be better listeners if there's a problem to solve, if it's something that we're interested in, if we're trying to put together the Legos in our own head. But with that being said, if you tell me what college you went to, I'll probably forget it within a half hour.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not relevant to what we're trying to achieve in this conversation, which is put out good
Mhm.
information to salespeople. In other words, why are you asking me that? Okay, I'll kind of give you a lip service answer. Yeah, got it. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's
I
back, it's
don't
back to
care
relevance.
what your favorite beverage is if it's not something that we're trying to solve together.
Yeah.
It's very much what are we trying to accomplish. The introverts I know, myself, everybody, like every introvert I talk to, we really enjoy going down these rabbit hole dives of information, like those Wikipedia rabbit holes where you're reading something and then they're like, oh, you see that hyperlink? I don't totally know about that. And click, click,
Yeah.
click. And all of a sudden you're looking at the poetic Edda in Norse mythology.
I
Like
bet you really have to watch out for that stuff then. So that's part of the
for me,
teaching that you
yes.
would say, be careful with this. It's great to a degree, you'll know more, but
Hmm.
once it gets overdone, same
But
as most things.
but if you love information, which I know a lot of introverts do, again, we're being stereotypical because we're talking of 30 to 50% of a population.
Yeah.
But if you absolutely love information, you're going to keep diving and mining that vein that kind of aligns with what you care about. And if you're selling something that you care about, it's a lot easier to keep going after that vein.
Is there conversely then the danger that as an information lover who likes getting it, when it comes the time to give it, you can give it and give it and give it
Yes.
and give it and give it,
Yeah.
and the poor person on the other end is thinking, I don't need all this.
100%. It's one of the biggest problems I've had, particularly when I jump into a new sales role, is I've got all this information and I want to share it with people. And it hurts because I just over explain things and I don't need to. Like one of the jobs I had, I was selling diesel fuel. They only care that they're saving money. They don't need to totally understand, cost plus and market directions and all of that other stuff. Like they don't care. It's they just want to know, okay, well, roughly how much is this going to save me?
Yeah, good, like it. Next. Yeah, but don't
Yeah.
you then
So
wonder where we sourced it and how we've worked the derivatives to get the nope.
100%, that's an issue that we could go into. So it's about the best introverted salespeople look at themselves almost like filters for information.
Mm,
Like
okay.
we want to get as much information as we can, but we need to get rid of 80% of everything that we learn because it's not pertinent to this conversation.
I
So
like
so
that.
that's another thing that comes in when you're doing the research. Like again, if I'm doing research into you that I wanted to sell to you, it very much behooves me to learn all those things, where you went to school, like all of that kind of stuff, on the off chance that like that becomes relevant. Like certain schools have certain. I'm thinking of selling to lawyers. Like there are some colleges that are more conservative than others, and things like that. So you may want that information, but only you know what's valuable or isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you see somebody went to a private Christian college, that may come up. It may not.
So you've got all these little like pathways and these little what ifs, these little scenarios.
Hmm.
That comes up, I'm ready. That comes up, I'm ready. That comes up, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Is is that to do just purely with the information and the like of information, or is it a mechanism? Is it a kind of defense thing of not wanting to be exposed, not wanting to be stuck out there as not knowing and appearing almost like a bit foolish or something like that?
Yes, both.
Yeah.
It's it, it it's a strength, but it's also a defense mechanism. Like it's
Yeah.
both the sword and the shield at the same time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's the thing that you're going to use to like conquer the sale, but it's also the thing you're going to protect yourself from embarrassment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so just because it can be either or, but to us it's both. Um, but you need the training in terms of how and when you use which.
Yeah. I mean, I can certainly think of, probably the majority of salesperson I've worked with, again, we're talking almost like made up numbers, who probably because of the industries I've worked in and typically who people thought good salespeople were. Yeah. Hail fellow, well met, get them out there, go and play some golf, talk football, talk
Yeah.
rugby, talk whatever. It's just, guys, calm down, slow down, prep better, send agendas, do things just a little bit more professionally, and you'll get way more from it. But they're wanting to
Hmm.
dash around, do this. And of course, management are pushing them to do all that. So
Yeah.
you're saying, well, I'm pushing on open door here because these guys are great at that. I still almost need
Yeah.
to stop them doing it a little bit so well, in inverted commas. Yeah.
Hmm.
Moving them more towards action.
Yeah.
There's a
And
spectrum, isn't it?
like
Yeah.
there's always going to be a balance. Like again, introverts, they could get paralyzed by too much information. Extroverts can like leap before they look in some
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
Like they're just going to jump into a conversation and they're like, just okay, well maybe it'll work out 1 out of 100 times, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
So where's the like? How much analysis do you need to do beforehand? And it's about finding the right balance for you. The problem is understanding that most of the training is structured around being an extrovert and just, okay, just make the calls. Here's your script.
Yeah.
Here's your script and just make the calls. Here's your script and just make the calls. Here's the list of frequently asked questions. Here's how you answer them.
Yeah.
And now here I am being that, like, as when I was like a 25-year-old salesperson and like thinking, okay, the script is going to save me. I'll find that one script that works for everybody.
Mm.
And there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Or I'm reading the script that my manager gave me. I'm a 25-year-old kid who sounds like a 60-year-old man.
Because it's been written by a 60-year-old man. Yeah.
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 And it's so much like techno babble and like worthless information that the manager thinks is super, super important.
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? That is a
Yeah.
tough one.
But you see, I mean, me and you have been in this field for how long? How many bad scripts have you seen written by managers?
Oh, too many.
Yes. But the idea is, well, I gave you a script. Well, marketing gave you your pitch deck. That should give you
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
you need. I at one point I was selling security systems, and the way they taught us to sell was they gave us a printed out PowerPoint that was 32 pages long. And they expected me to go into a home and go page by page with people.
yeah,
They don't want to do that.
yeah.
They don't
Start.
care. They
Let me have a little guess on that. Was it starting with the company story, then all the people that we've
Yeah.
worked with before? Then did it have a map of the states or the world, even of all the
Mm,
locations that you've got? And then did it have the? Yeah,
yeah. All the time. It was founded by Jonathan Blandname the Third in 1946. That stupid stuff.
which they love hearing about themselves. The people who write this.
Yeah. And it's like, well, this builds our credibility. No, it doesn't. Like,
Sure.
unless they're related to Jonathan Bland's name the third, it doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, a good pitch deck in my mind, like, is just okay. Problem, implication, solution. Do you have this problem? Let's fix it before it becomes implication by doing this. Problem, implication, solution.
Which is a conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all it is. But and when like my wife for her course, she has to write an elevator pitch by herself, and that's all I told her is okay. Problem, implication, solution. These are the problems I'm solved that I'm really good at. I've helped them before they became this, and here's how I do that.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk about this more. Happy days. We're into a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all it is. It's but we dive so deep and we dig up so much garbage about ourselves that we think is important because it's all about us. It's trash. It's just
Yeah.
trash.
Yeah. I think we're not. I knew we would. We're straying off
Well,
introvert, extrovert. We're just talking world of
well,
sales now. We're not talking world of sales. All ends of the spectrum. This is happening.
and but when you look at that from the introvert extrovert spectrum and we start thinking about it that way, it's again it's the exact problem you brought up where it's an over analysis of information,
Yeah.
which is a very fatal flaw that introverts can have. Um, Thinking like it's just a bad filter where we're not like there's still some giant particles that are left that we could have gotten rid of.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. No, it is really
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so you're helping guys. So go back onto the introvert thing. So you're helping people realize what their strengths are, which would be great at analysis, great at research,
Mhm.
helping them manage energy. I think that's really important. And
Yes.
I love some things that you do because I reckon anybody could probably, uh, unless you're just on bunny, but anyone's gonna benefit from that. What kind of stuff do you say to sort of help people work
So
to?
it's very much about like creating the strategy ahead of time and really understanding what works for you. And like when I'm talking about managing energy, again, introverts recharge alone, extroverts recharge in groups. So how do you put yourself in a position where you could be somewhat hooked into the charger while you're selling?
Mm,
If you're an
mm,
introvert, okay, it's going to be more research heavy. It's going to be more deep conversation heavy. If you're an extrovert, that 50 phone calls a day still work because you're constantly recharging with each little conversation.
yeah.
So understanding how you recharge was really one of the biggest eye openers for me in my own career.
Yeah, I was thinking sort of back in the day when we're sort of training people that you must do calls
Hmm.
between 9 o'clock and 11, and then 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5, or whatever it was. I can't remember
Yeah,
now. Something like that, I suppose.
yeah.
I don't know, people probably still are training that.
Well,
But
and they still are.
but
Like for me, like as an introvert, when I walk into an office, I need to make sure that that's the right office for me. I need to look
right,
at the environment as a whole. I know if I'm in an open office concept, I can't get any work done. Like that, one person gets up to go to the bathroom and everyone kind of prairie dogs over the cubicle wall. I can't subsist like that.
yeah,
Or hearing that like audible groan from somebody because they saw something on Facebook in the middle of me writing an email, it takes me 20 minutes to get into a flow state. And I
hmm.
know it takes me that long. And I have to accommodate for that when I'm doing like my writing, my editing, my whatever. If somebody makes a noise every half hour, I'm getting 10 minutes, 10 minutes times, whatever. I'm get an hour and a half total a day, whatever it winds up being.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting 20 minutes an hour. So two times 160 minutes out of an 8-hour workday that I could actually focus and do work.
Got it. So it sounds as though, again, let me just paraphrase, make sure I have understood it well, is that it's not just, the external time influencers and that
Hmm.
that kind of thing you need to look at. Is look at yourself, how you're recharging, the things that are going to be affecting you. Yeah, we
Yes.
are probably going to have to align that to, and we know that people are, if you are going to be calling them around at this sort of time of day. Okay.
Hmm.
So make sure you're up for that time of day in the right space. but you've recharged by doing your recharge things, which is
Mhm.
researching for that and everything else around that. Structure your workflow.
Like, we're not going to get to a point in any sales cycle where outreach is gone. Like, it may not be over the phone, it may be through DM, it may be whatever, but understand how it works for you. I'm a big fan of power hours. Like, you're going to be making these calls from that, again, 11 to 12. So you are going to structure your day where you're doing research until 11, and then you make the calls for that hour. Like, I'm still a fan of that,
Yeah.
but understand if you're in an environment that's too crazy and too distracting, that hour is worthless.
Or if everyone has been in your world, actually, that's a lot of power, and everyone else, that's just us not being normal. You're like, no, no, that is really quite powerful.
Yeah,
You're already at my, I'm already at my 10. Right now, we're going
yeah,
to turn it up. I'm drained. I'm depleted. I've got nothing
yeah.
left because you've drawn it all out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But understanding that, and like, okay, if you need to recharge during the day and you need to put these structures in place, and if you're a manager, you need to know this too. Like, if you're a manager or you're a sales director, whatever, you need to put people in the positions that they succeed in. You can't just treat everybody like they're the same position every single time. Like, actually evaluate their skills, do those SWOT analysis with them. Okay, how do they function the best? When do they function the best?
Yeah.
I suck at mornings. I've never been a morning person. I never like I do my best work from like 11 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning.
Wow.
That's how my brain is structured because it's quiet. I go without distractions. I could just put my head down, do all my writing, whatever. That may not work in corporate America, but for me as an introvert and me knowing that, I can do all of my research work then and be ready for, 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I have to make my phone call.
And that's the point. I think that's probably the thing that we really need to emphasize. As we start to wrap this up, we need to emphasize when people are recharging, it's not that they're not selling. That
Yeah,
research that they're doing, that prep that they're undertaking, that agenda that they're sending, that decent proposal that they're writing, that's all
yeah,
part of selling. In fact, we want to get more
yeah,
people doing that stuff, I'd argue. So actually,
yeah.
don't just because they're not running around making calls and in meetings and jumping in planes and cars and all the rest of it. They're doing a
Like,
better
the
job because of
idea
this.
of before a meeting to go in, like, I graduated from college to be a history teacher. To write a lesson plan before a meeting and send it to the people you're going to sit down with and just say, here's what we're going to go over. It's going to take us about 10 minutes to go through this, 5 minutes to go through this. And to give them that lesson plan ahead of time shows so much professionalism.
Yep.
But most managers, well, I checked your outbound calls and it doesn't look good.
Oh, honestly, send me that. I'll be thinking, brilliant. This person is thinking about this. I was actually thinking about bouncing the meeting because I'm pretty busy. I'm
Yeah,
not going to do that. Actually,
yeah,
if they're going to talk about that, I need to just dig out some information because I'm not sure. And they're going to ask me that. And I'm going to look stupid. Right, get it ready.
yeah,
It's a better level conversation. And I think everyone
yeah.
should be doing this stuff.
But again, instead we just look at the KPI of outreach, and for introverts, that's a like a death knell. Like, we can't only look at outreach as the KPI. We have to look at like quality of conversations. And if you're working in, let's say, manufacturing, if you're working and you have a finite amount of customers that you could have in the world, like you're
Yep.
doing beverage distribution, whatever it happens to be, there's only so many places that can sell your whiskey, whatever it happens to be. If you have a finite amount of customers, you don't focus on the numbers, you focus on high percentage shop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what introverts can do very well, is make sure you have the best possible they put themselves in the best possible situation, yeah, to actually get that business. Or just, this isn't the right fit, let's move on.
Best possible situation. Your battery's going, mate. Your battery's going.
Very much.
There you go. More coffee, more coffee. No, look,
Mhm.
man, look, we could carry on this conversation forever because actually, yes, we're talking about introverts, but we're not really. We're talking about good selling. I wanted to come at
Yeah.
it from the angle that, that is your speciality. That is
Yes.
where you're doing a lot of work and really kind of,
Yeah.
you're pushing quite a lot of people, actually. That must hurt
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But it's for
Well,
the greater good, isn't it?
again, there's so many good ways to sell. Like, I'm not a Sandler coach. I'm not a challenger coach. I'm not. Those are all great systems, but I'm not here to tell somebody that there's one size fits all. What I do is teach people how to sell as introverts to find the system that works for them, that prioritizes recharging so that they're in game shape when the buzzer sounds.
Mate, that's what professional athletes do, isn't it? It's all about the
That's
rest.
exactly
It's
it.
all about the
So
recovery.
so how do you build a strategy based on the players that you have? And so many people are like they keep looking for those same players. They keep looking for quarterbacks and are wondering why they're losing on the offensive line. Like it's
Yeah,
you can't fill a team with all the same hail fellow well met. Introverts have such a power in this field.
yeah.
They can be so strong, they can be so great at what they did if managers knew how to train them.
This is also powerful.
Yeah.
Where can people reach out? Because hopefully this is resonating with some people who are listening
Yeah.
to this. Where can people find you?
So obviously, the best place is just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Red Staffstrom. If it, if you're listening to this, I have a big bushy orange beard. I'm very tough to miss on LinkedIn. Red like the color STAFSTROM. Brokensalespeople.com is the website. You can find links for everything on there. My podcast, my sales course. I have a sales course for introverts.
Yeah.
It's about 4 hours of how to build the structure that works for an introvert rather than, you know, just copy and pasting some training from whatever in the 1980s. But yeah, brokensalespeople.com. Find me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. We'll
I
pop
look like
those.
an orange Chewbacca. I'm tough to miss.
Glad you said it, not me. You got axes behind you. Again, if you're listening to this and that didn't make sense, have a quick look on YouTube. Red's background is a bunch of axes and lightsabers and things.
Yeah, and like a big beard, plain monochrome T-shirt because literally after this I'm getting under a truck and I don't want to get good shirts and ruin them all the time.
Oh no, we'll pop those. We'll pop those into the show notes.
Yeah. So,
Brilliant.
but no, this has been awesome. I've loved the conversation. We could go a lot deeper, obviously.
I think we will. I think we will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, mate.
All right. Awesome.
You've been listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. If you like what you've heard, why not subscribe so you know when the latest episodes become available? Take a look at my YouTube channel. All episodes are available there, along with extra material all about modern selling. Connect with me on LinkedIn, where I'll share more information around collaborative selling. All part of my mission around having good people doing good things in a good way.